Welcome to our time together. Jesus taught us to call God Father, and several times the Bible compares God to a mother. So it is safe to say that our relationship with God is similar to that of a child to their parent. God is the ideal parent, of course, but what happens if our relationship with Him is less than ideal? Psychologists have developed what they call attachment theory, which explains how children form relationships with their parents and with other caregivers. Fortunately, most children have what is called a secure attachment. They know that their parent is there for them when they need them, that their parents will care for them. But some children have what is called an anxious-avoidant attachment, also sometimes called an ambivalent attachment. This happens if the child's parents are unpredictable, if it's an on-again, off-again kind of caring and love. A child who is anxious-avoidant wants desperately to connect with their parent, but they also feel a need to protect themselves from their parent because their relationship is insecure. They're afraid that they'll lose that connection, and so they're afraid to trust their parents. They fear that they'll be abandoned. With this in mind, let's look at Psalm 39, because it could be the prayer of someone with an anxious-avoidant attachment. This is a person who is trying to connect with God and tries to use the typical styles and patterns of relating to God, but none of them seem to work. So let's look at how this plays out in Psalm 39. First, we have verses 1 through 3, in which a psalmist decides to keep silent. They're worried about what the wicked will think of them. Maybe the wicked will tell the psalmist that they deserve to be facing the struggle that they're in. But for the psalmist, it's not just other people who are wicked. It is God Himself who is wicked. If you can't trust God to be good, maybe you're better off not connecting with Him at all. But that doesn't work for the psalmist. The psalmist wants a relationship that they just can't seem to have. And then we go on to the second part of the psalm, verses 4 through 6, in which a psalmist talks about the transience of life. You're here today and gone tomorrow. Not only is my life going to end, but so will everyone else's. In other words, you can't count on other people to be there for you because the time's going to come when they'll be taken away from you. And this is exactly what a child with anxious-avoidant attachment would feel. As the psalmist said, everyone is but a breath, even those who seem secure. So if I can't trust for anyone else to be there for me, how can I trust that God will? In the third part of the psalm, verses 7 through 11, the psalmist turns toward God in hope, looking for God to help them. But because they can't fully trust God, it is difficult to put hope in God, to believe that God will indeed help them. And again, this is something that a child with unpredictable parents would feel. The psalmist tries to use the typical, standard, normal way of turning to God, but it doesn't work for them. So they try to be silent again, because their words of hope are mixed with words of complaint. And finally, we come to the fourth section of the psalm, verses 12 to 13. The psalm ends with an image that the psalmist is like a foreigner or a stranger. They don't belong. They have no place in God's world. They wish that they could trust God. They wish that God would be there for them, but that's not what they are experiencing. And so in the end, the psalmist asks for God to leave them alone. In essence, the psalmist says, if I can't trust you, God, I don't want to be jerked around by your on-again, off-again love. We're looking this month at Job in my sermons that I'm preaching, and Psalm 39 could be a prayer from Job. Or it could be a prayer from anyone else who is struggling with their faith in the most difficult situations. I heard someone once call Psalm 39 a fractured prayer. It is someone who is struggling to communicate with God, but just can't seem to pull it off. The fact that this fractured prayer is in the Bible helps us know that this is how some people sometimes experience God. Maybe it's something you have felt at times. Maybe it's something that you're struggling with right now, or maybe this is what your relationship with God always feels like. If you don't feel like God is trustworthy, if you wrestle with your relationship with Him, then maybe this is a prayer for you. Would you pray with me, please? Lord, while we want to believe, and while our faith teaches us that you are the perfect parent, the perfect father, the mother who cares for us, we recognize, Lord, at times that that is not how we experience you in our lives. For some of us, we have a secure relationship with you, and for that we are grateful. But if that is the case for us, help us to recognize that this is not how everyone experiences you. And Lord, if we are struggling in our relationship with you, if we hear that you're good and faithful and loving, but don't always feel that that is how you're at work in our lives, help us to lift up a fractured prayer like Psalm 39. To continue to struggle in our relationship with you, even though it hurts, even though it is difficult. Give us the courage to continue to struggle to connect with you. Amen. Thanks for joining me. We'll talk again later.